now. Under the status quo, romantic relationships are often portrayed as the ultimate source of happiness, which causes many people to view singleness as a temporary failure rather than a legitimate lifestyle, right? We believe that parents should instead raise children to prefer being single, teaching them that fulfillment, self-worth, and success can exist independently of romantic attachment. For all these reasons, proud to propose. In my speech, I'm going to present three main arguments supporting this motion. But first, let's look at our model, right? How will parents achieve this? One, parents will achieve this through advice and guidance. They will encourage children to ask, what value does this relationship have? Instead of asking, how do I find a relationship and a romantic partner, right? Secondly, through encouragement, they can praise independence and they can praise self-sufficiency instead of romance, right? What they will not do is band-aiding or punish romantic relationships, or if the child truly found somebody who's suitable and exceptional and wants to marry them or partner with them, they cannot prevent the children from marrying or partnering if that's truly what the children want, right? And they can also not just tell they'll tell the child that, oh, relationships are immoral or relationships are inherently bad, right? So what they will do is that they will create a presumption in favor of singleness, where the children should remain single unless they find a relationship that is exceptionally valuable and improves their life. Let's move on to arguments. The first main argument that we're going to give you is that it reduces pressure and anxiety. When you raise children to prefer singleness, that frees them from a significant source of social anxiety and perceived failure, right? Most societies right now create this timeline. One, get a boyfriend or girlfriend in your high school or university, and then find a really serious partner in your 20s or something, and then marry by a certain age, and then have children shortly after that age, right? That is the timeline that society currently supports. One, people are internalizing these expectations, and keep in mind that it's usually females and women and girls who are keeping in mind these expectations. Every single period of singleness feels like evidence that they're falling behind the rest of society, right? So what they're constantly asking is, oh, why is everybody else dating, right? What is wrong with me? Am I running out of time? Do I need to find a romantic partner right now, right this instance, right? Parents on our side, Hence, on our side proposition, teach a very different metric of success, right? The child learns that being single is already a successful outcome, but a relationship is optional and it's not mandatory, right? And as a result, if you get rejected in a relationship, that hurts less. If you break up, then that feels less catastrophic, because let's be true, breakups are not that catastrophic, right? And also periods of singleness are not, interpreted as personal failure, as temporary personal failure in any way, right? So the impact here, this creates a lifetime reduction in stress and insecurity, because many people's suffering does not come from being single itself. It comes from believing that they're supposed to not be single because everybody around them, the society around them, has this virtue that we have to date, right? Okay. Second argument here, parents should prepare children for what they can control, right? Good parenting teaches children how to thrive and live under circumstances that are largely within their own control. Parents here cannot guarantee that the child will find a compatible partner. They cannot guarantee that their partner or their child will remain loyal, and they cannot guarantee that the marriage will be successful, or even that the child will want or not want romance in the future, right? Relationships depends entirely on the choices of another human being, right? In contrast, what parents can teach and what they should teach is self-respect, independence, emotional regulation, financial stability, personal fulfillment, personal competence, and everything like that, right? These things are still valuable, and they stay valuable regardless of whether or not the child ever enters a relationship or ever thinks about relationship or ever meets anybody who's compatible and suitable or exceptional, right? Comparative here, let's imagine two children. Child A is taught a major and the ultimate source of happiness will come from finding the right person. Child B, meanwhile, is taught that you can build a complete and fulfilling life by yourself. I'll take that after I finish my point. If neither finds a long-term partner, then child B is actually much better equipped to flourish in life, right? So the impact here, parents should build foundations that do not rely on unpredictable external factors, right? And singleness is a life strategy entirely under your control. Finding a perfect partner is not. I'll take that POI.
Are you protecting children from bad relationship or from relationship themselves?
Firstly, we're actually going to address bad relationships in our next argument. So I think presenting my next argument will just answer that question, right? You cannot find a good relationship if you actively try to search for a relationship. Like, that's just not going to happen. When you actively pursue a relationship, that usually makes people worse at finding good and high quality relationships, right? We have three layers of mechanisms under this. Firstly, desperation lowers your standards significantly, right? When somebody believes that they need a relationship to be happy, they become more willing and more incentivized to overlook red flags. They can settle for incompatibility, and they can stay in unhealthy or toxic situations longer, right? The priority becomes I need a relationship instead of I need a good relationship, right? So our model here avoids this trap because the child is already content while being single and they can afford to wait, right? So in this case, obviously, we have just answered your question that we need we're protecting children from bad relationships because on your side you are more likely to get a bad relationship, right? Second mechanism here, the best relationships usually come from your existing lives instead of meetings with another person that your parents arranged for you, right? Many strong relationships arise when you have shared interests, when you have friend groups in your community, when you have work, when you have community activities, and just long term you're around this person in the long term, right? They emerge because there's two fulfilled individuals who are naturally encountering each other, right? In contrast, if you as a person are aggressively searching for a partner, then you probably will optimize for the existence of a relationship rather than the quality of the match, right? And that's really harmful. The government can frame it as, oh, people find partners when they are busy building meaningful lives, not when lives become a search for a partner, right? Final mechanism here, when there's going to be a reduced pressure, then this is going to create healthier attraction, right? People are generally more attractive when they have goals and they have confidence and they are more emotionally stable, right? When they're not dependent on validation or anything like that, right? A child who is raised to be comfortable single develops exactly these traits, which makes people more attracted to them, right? Ironically, the mindset most likely to produce the eventually healthy relationships, which like everybody wants in this room, right, is often the one that does not desperately seek them. Even if opposition argues that relationships are valuable, our model may actually produce better relationships because the child enters them from a position of abundance rather than desperation and need. So at the end of the day, Judge, ultimately, our side is creating the individuals who are happier alone, who are less vulnerable to social pressure, and who are better equipped to make genuine choices, right? If we raise the children and we raise them to prefer singleness, then we're not denying them love and we're not preventing them from ever entering a relationship, right? But we're ensuring that any relationship they enter is a choice of born desire and value and not necessity. For all these reasons, please give the ballot to the government.
Respected adjudicators, ladies and gentlemen, the opposition proudly states that today's motion, this House would raise their child to not prefer being single. And this is an after motion. Therefore, the burden on both of the teams is not to prove whether marriage or singlehood is objectively a better lifestyle. However, what we are trying to say is if you are the parent, what values would you instill in your child in order to best achieve your interests as a parent? And we believe that a parent has three fundamental incentives: happy, and they want them meaningful and emotionally fulfilling life. Second, parents want to protect their child from any unnecessary harm, and they want to protect their child. Finally, parents want to build a loving, trusting relationship with their child, and one that continues until adulthood and even after they grow up. Our position is that raising a child to prefer being single does not achieve these three goals. Instead, the opposition believes that the parents should teach their child on how to build a better relationship and healthy relationships and what it looks like to have a healthy marriage, while also allowing them to freely decide whether marriage is ultimately right for them. We want them to explore different types of relationships and how a relationship could help them and also harm them. And we want them to make informed decisions when they grow up in the future. Today, an increasing number of people voluntarily choose to remain single, and this is the status quo. In countries such as South Korea, declining marriage and fertility rates reflect these attitudes towards marriage. And this observation is very important because this demonstrates that children are already exposed to the messages that normalize or even encourage remaining single. These messages come from social media, popular culture, schools, peers, and broader social trends, not solely from parents. Therefore, the government's proposal is unnecessary. If society already provides the strong encouragement towards singlehood, parents should instead fulfill the role that society cannot. Parents should instead be preparing their children for the emotional maturity, communication skills, and relationship literacy that these children need to build healthy partnerships if they choose to pursue them. In today's debate, I will establish two arguments. First, I will demonstrate that teaching children to develop healthy relationships better protects their long-term happiness and well-being than encouraging a preference for singlehood. Second, I will show that with able to foster stronger parent-child relationships as well. My deputy leader of the opposition will rebut the government's arguments, further extend our analysis, and explain why the opposition's world better fulfills the incentives of the responsible parents. With that, I will now move on to my first contention. My first contention is that parents best protect their child's happiness by allowing them to make an informed choice rather than teaching them just to prefer one lifestyle. The parents, like I already said, they want their child to, and with the negative side, we can fulfill this. So the parents want their child to have a happier lifestyle, and they want them to have the emotional support and well-being. However, how will their children be able to have this emotional support and well-being if later on in their life they are independent from their parents and they have nobody? The parents want their child to be happy, but how will the children not be able to feel lonely and be fully happy when with no one beside them? The negative side believes that the children need a partner in order to have a fulfilling lifestyle and be able to allow their parents to also be happy as well. If the parents teach their relationship skills rather than promoting a specific lifestyle, then the children can grow up understanding both the benefits and responsibilities of these relationships while also learning that remaining single could be a valid option. And as they mature, they are able to evaluate the relationships based on the compatibility, shared values, and personal readiness, not just because they want to avoid marriage or because they feel obligated to be married. And they will be able to make an informed decision that reflects their own circumstances rather than a parental preference. Isn't this what an actual happier lifestyle is shown? And because of the decision is truly their own, they will be more satisfied and the parents will be more satisfied. Why? Because their children are happy. Moving on to my second contention. My second contention is that parents want relationships for their child and not for their children to hide them. Currently, a lot of the children and a lot of the students right now are hiding their relationships from their parents. Why? Because they think that their parents will not like it and their parents will be dismissive. And they will continue to overthink how their parents will react to their relationships. However, if the parents can show that having relationships can be good and having relationships can be beneficial, then the children will not need to find the need to hide the relationships from their parents. They will be able to communicate more with their parents, actually, and they will be able to get the advice from their parents. They will ask them how to be able to get into good relationships. And with these advices and with more communication with their parents, they will be able to make more informed choices in the future as well. And if the parents continue to say, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you cannot marry, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, then the parents will not be establishing a safe or loving environment or a peaceful family environment for their own child. Yes?
Do you agree that under the beliefs of these toxic parents, marriage is never a freedom but really a cage?
Repeat your question one more time.
Do you agree that under the indoctrination of toxic belief by these parents, marriage is never a freedom but really just a forced choice?
No, because what we are arguing is that parents can provide an example for the children's choice. We are not saying that the parents will force one, but we are saying that parents can act as an example so that the children can see and make their choice. And also continuing, why should the parents not be forcing their own lifestyle or a certain choice? Because then their parents will not be establishing a loving or safe environment for the peaceful family environment for their child. And for all of these reasons, because the parents should have a good relationship with their child, and because their parents should be caring for their own child's happiness and well-being, we strongly negate the resolution. Thank you.
Now, imagine a world where everyone taunts you for being single. Family members dislike you because you aren't passing the bloodline down. Friends think you're unattractive. Society watches you age, framing you as someone never to be liked by another. Yet that is the status quo for the global trend. And as the pressure for young people gets worse, more negative consequences follow. In my speech, as the second speaker of proposition, I will provide a couple rebuttals to the opposition, do some rebuilding and re-explanation, and add an extension to further the points our first speaker talked about. Their primary push is on families wanting children to be married, and they believe that this actually creates more choice for the children, and children can see their parents as role models, etc. But we actually tell you right now, getting married is good. That is what everyone thinks. And they think that is good. But we think that this is actually damaging. They think that being single is still a choice, but that is not true as of the status quo. We don't want everyone to get married. We don't want everyone to get married just because society says so, just because their parents say so. We want children to have the choice of being single and being educated to be so. And if they choose to do so, they're accepted by society. As of the status quo, there is lots of evolutionary culture. Children can be mentally overwhelmed, and the financial pressure as they become a young man will be damaging. And yet, on side opposition, the parents, the cultural norm, still give them the extra pressure for marriage. That point we will expand on later, but that is the cultural trend. They claim that getting married is good. But that is exactly the mindset of society right now. But we tell you that many children think that many young people right now, many children think that this is actually not good because they have too much pressure. They believe that they don't have enough money to sustain a family, or simply they don't want to be a couple. They don't want to be married. This is fundamentally a cage for those who are young, for them to force them becoming married and and going against what they truly think so. But let us define what is unique on our side, because they claim that on our side we don't give any opportunities for marriage to the children. Of course, they can argue that those married might be outsiders, etc., but that is not how it works. Three layers of responses here. As the status quo, getting married is highly valued, and even if children are educated to be single, as the motion reads, and give you the valued preference to be so, they still often touch upon being married throughout their growth. Children can see parents already married, romance movies, etc., etc., and they understand that this choice exists and they can respect such choice. Secondly, we are creating a preference, not just hostility. We are not teaching children that relationships are bad or that married people are wrong. We are simply teaching that being single is a desirable and complete lifestyle. Children can still respect and appreciate those who are couples. Thirdly, on uniqueness, the main point. The motion reads as this house prefers, and thus it isn't coercion to be single or married. Parents teach children to prefer saving money over spending it and prefer healthy eating over junk food. But children may later choose differently. Similarly, parents can encourage singlehood as the better default while still respecting the child's final decision. Extending on our first speaker's arguments, I will provide you with two main layers of impacts to explain to you why maintaining the social norm and pressuring young people to get married, especially with more inflexible older generations, is catastrophic. The core mechanism on our side, as explained by our first speaker, is that the social pressures of the external world will rush marriage and relationships. And this is rooted from several causes. Firstly, it is the old biases, especially from older generations. These generations often prioritize birth over anything else and simply wish to extend the family traditions and the bloodline. For previous generations, marriage might be seen as the markers of adulthood. This might define a young person going into adulthood and succeeding in life. And marriage means that you're finally growing into an adult. It might seem to them as weird by not marrying. Historically, children might be considered as economic assets, and they're crucial for care for parents and continuing the family with happiness. And this can result in an overall social norm passed down, whether you are old or not. If you're single, you're a failure. You're not
Information.
attractive enough, you're not wanted by others, failing your family's expectations. Even if the status quo, there might be some messages of people being single, there might be some of the population being single, that is still not the global trend, or not what every single family or the majority of the family think so. This might simply be focused upon South Korea. Regardless, many families can still conflict their ideas with children who are single, and society can still frame those who choose to be single. Those young people are those who are actually influenced by social media, not those who are parents, not those who are from the older generations. Society can still frame those who choose to be single as failures, and these values and these definitions can lead to ultimate mental issues. Impact 1. This means that many people can rush to choices, as our first speaker already said. And this means that people can stay in extremely unhealthy relationships. Those who didn't find their true love can force themselves into someone they don't really care about and frame them instead as a burden for their life, their finances, and for someone to
Information.
cope with as an unwanted pressure. Arguments, conflict, abuse can subsequently follow. And there will be much more cases as there is already of family abuse or sinking people into depression or anxiety. Impact 2. Those who insist upon staying single or can't find anyone who wants to pair with him or her will feel like failures. Those who age single can be deemed as unwanted, and people can often frame them as someone who is unneeded for the society and a failure for their family. And whether it is true or not, it is still mentally harmful for them, and even if they want to truly and freely pursue a life of choice, freedom, and less financial stress, they won't be able to because of their surroundings. Sure, there might be social media telling you that, oh, you can be single. But as they step into society, as they as they get used to more adults or those who are older than they, or older than them, they can still feel guilt because the overall trend is marriage, not being single. Therefore, all in all, for the young people to have a choice, please vote for proposition.
What the team government is missing in this debate is that our side is not trying to force marriage. It's not a cage, unlike what their side tries to say. Because the motion says would raise the child to prefer being single. To deny does not mean that we'll replace the word single to marriage. Better, it means to support the sentence would not raise a child to prefer being single. The reason why our first speaker explained the benefit of being in romantic relationship and being in a marriage is not because we'll pressure the children to be married, but rather it is to explain the benefits that the team government will never have the chance to experience. Of course, we will still respect children being single. However, we will not actively teach them or actively raise them to prefer being single. It's a choice that the child will make in the future. It's not the active or the exclusive role of the parents should take in. So we believe that we will support the motion. Support the side where we will not actively be in the part of shaping the children's value. Even if parents don't teach the children being single is desirable, the society already do. Our first speaker already explained this. For example, she talked about how increasing trend of being non-married person or declining birth rate or social media narratives that emphasize being independent and more and the importance of being more freedom. Then, what makes this debate special is a special role of parents, and that's what our side has been explaining for this whole debate. We tell you that parents have an exclusive obligation, exclusive benefit, and exclusive role that they can make a peaceful and loving environment of their family. The moment the parents choose and actively raise a children that is preferring to be single, they create a child who's overthinking, who's worrying whether their mom married to a dad that is not by her choice, whether the mom regrets marrying to their dad. This creates an environment where it is not peaceful, where it's not loving. And this is the case where parents not fulfill the role of the special role because teaching the child to be single or telling that single is more desirable can be achieved by any other methods like media or other friends or people that are beside them that are not parents. Then 3 layers of rebuttals that I'll give you, and then I'll move on to our final argument about the parents wanting the wish of the parents to be paid back by their children. Then first, rebuttal. Government talks about how they'll achieve the motion by first, advice and guidance, second, encouragement, and thirdly, they talk about how they cannot punish romantic relationship in their side. But in order for someone to prefer something over another, you have to teach the harm of another option. Because the definition of prefer is to acknowledge that one thing is better than the other. This means that so-called advice and guidance the team government talks about will not be as ideal as what they want to be. Our first speaker already characterized this. She told you that first it will look like constantly exposing the benefit of being single, then second, explain the harms of marriage. This is where the parents will not fulfill the role and special obligation that they have to do.
Point of information.
I'll take it later. It is their obligation to create a peaceful and loving environment that the children feel safe. The children feels that the mom and the dad is happy to have them. However, the moment that the parents explain the harms of marriage, the child are more likely to think and overthink about the life that their mom or dad could have had if they did not marry. Then our second rebuttal is on how parents can. It's on the statement that government talks about how parents cannot guarantee a good partner. Government says parents cannot guarantee their child will find a good partner. We agree. Finding a perfect partner is incredibly rare, but that misunderstands why people seek relationship in the first place. The value of romantic relationship is not only the final destination of marriage or finding the one. The process itself creates value. What do I mean by this? Through relationship, people learn emotional maturity, communication, compromise, vulnerability, and how to understand another person beyond themselves. This is a skill that is needed in their life for a long time, not only in romantic relationship, but also in their company or in their school life or many other sectors that really needs people relationship. This means that even relationship that does not last in the future can still provide meaningful experiences and personal growth. People learn what they need, what boundaries they should set, and what healthy or unhealthy dynamics looks like. This means that in side government, all of these opportunities are less likely to achieved because parents are actively raising their child to prefer to be single, which miss out these opportunities. Then second, government says they actively pursue a relationship will never lead to high quality relationship. But before I do, I'll take the PY.
Okay, so you told us that our model is that being single is bad, but we told you many times in our speeches that that's not our model. Our model is that children should remain single unless they find a relationship that is exceptionally valuable and improves their life. Could you do refutation according to that, please?
I never said that your model is about how being single is bad. I think that's more of our side. And also, even if this is not true, I already rebutted to your model how it's not likely to have advice and guidance and encouragement as a model to achieve the motion because these actions are actually not realistic to make your child prefer something over another. Okay, I'll move on. You also talk about how actively pursuing a relationship will never lead to a high quality relationship, but their mechanism is based on desperation. However, you don't have to teach the child to prefer being single in order to have a high quality relationship. What you'll do instead is what our side will do instead is use our counterfactual of teaching how to have a healthy relationship and healthy marriage, emphasizing their freedom and their independence over just being in a relationship with the person you love. Then our last argument is on how parents who want emotional, financial, and long-term support from their child are less likely to get it under proposition. Although this interest may seem immoral, this is something many parents want because they want a payback from their children because they spent their livelihood, they spent a lot of money onto their child, and now they're in a more vulnerable position. But their child is more successful. This is when these parents want the payback from their children. But if the children remain single for their livelihood, it's very hard for them to care for their parents. Why is this so? Two layers of mechanism. First mechanism is on relationship with children, and mechanism two is economic stability. As our first speaker has stated, it's very unlikely for a child to have a good relationship with their parents if the parents actively raise them to be single, because we told you about the overthinking process of children that they'll go through. They'll overthink if their mom and dad will not have a good relationship, and themselves is a mistake. The mechanism too is an economic stability. The moment they marry with another person, they instantly have a higher economic stability. And that's why it's more likely that parents will be paid back in our side. Proud to oppose.
We do not teach kids to reject love entirely. We simply believe that one should not enter marriage merely to satisfy their parents' expectations, that marriage should never be the obligatory milestone in one's life. But more crucially, a society filled with people who choose this partnership out of genuine longing, not family obligation or standards, have the chances of building a healthier family, one that is more sustainable in the long term, corresponding to our model, right? The motion here does not ask the proposition to prove how we do so, but rather outcomes of preferred single is better as opposed to status in which everyone is taught that marriage is an indispensable tool to happiness, right? So quick clarification and one observation before starting to analyzing the clashes. We aren't advocating, the proposition here aren't advocating for the model where we teach kids that relationships are always toxic, but that living independently is more of a superior goal in contrast to seeking for marriage as a life goal. Our advocacy only targets a toxic mindset and belief that forces people to rely on a partner to live a meaningful life, not relationships themselves. And the observation here, right? Our opposition says here that the motion is preference, not forcing. That does not give them any access to any of our impacts or benefits, right? If kids are taught at a young age that preferring marriage is superior to being single, the chances of kids being married to fulfill their burden of a family or parent satisfaction are still drastically higher, right? Clash one birth rates, right? They say that if kids are taught at a young age that preferring single is better, we are going to lower birth rates, right? For responses here, lowering of birth rates, its root cause stems from financial insecurity, not dating issues. Young adults delay marriage and children primarily due to sky-high rent, student debt, and unaffordable childcare. Even people who marry now intentionally limit family size. Second of all, teaching for kids that marriage is the end goal of the day, parents are implicitly indoctrinated the toxic belief that human value is tied to marriage and childbearing, and single lives are incomplete or worthless, right? Or that marriage or constructing a family is more like a burden and necessity that is superior to improving personal skills. Forcing kids to date as a goal does not raise the birth rates. Right? Marriage or being in a relationship does not directly correlate to birth rates either. Individuals that are married can still choose to not have kids. Secondly, when marriage becomes a responsibility or a goal, the chances of a family tearing apart will drastically increase. We don't see how this is net benefit to all. Thirdly, then, let's say sure this does raise the birth rate to some extent, teaching kids to be independent isn't equivalent to forcing them to avoid marriage. We believe that the order of which is wrong, right? Every core skill cultivated through comfortable single living drastically improves the quality of any marriage, right? And solves the most common conflicts that the opposition ignores. Whereas if kids are taught at a young age that marriage is the only way out, our opposition on intentionally caging kids to grow up relying on a partner to fill every void instead of learning how to stand on their own 2 feet. I'll take that POI.
If a child can learn red flags, boundaries, and emotional independence under status quo, what additional protection does your side provide?
Can you repeat that POI again? Sorry.
If a child can learn red flags, boundaries, and emotional independence under status quo, what additional protection does your side provide?
Right, okay, Judge. First of all, I would like to point out first that their point about how birth rates of how marriage raises birth rates, it stems on two flawless points. They believe that parents are going to help their kids into finding the perfect marriage where they live happily ever after. However, that is not the case, right? They also give an additional point here in their extension of how parents will have financial support after kids get married. However, Judge, first of all, we would like to point out this is simply absurd, right? Because the chances of parents in these cases, in their case, the chances of parents sending their child off simply to earn the financial support is high, right? They are abusing their child as a tool here in order to earn their financial support. We don't see how this is a net benefit to all of the families, to the kids, as also to the parents, right? Second of all, on how we provide the additional support, right? We believe that teaching kids to be independent, teaching them the skills of how learning to live independently is essential in every other case. We believe that teaching their kids to live independently, to be single in the first place, teaching them the skills in the first place, these skills can only be then useful when these kids want to pursue marriage. Secondly, right? Now, clash to personal autonomy. They say that parents teach their kids to recognize different types of relationship, not forcing them to. Two responses here. One, it's still a burden for their children. They aren't exactly offering them pure freedom. I.e., for example, when a parent teaches a kid the importance of good grades, the kids are going to be burdened to pursue the perfect perfect score. Similarly, even if they say they aren't forcing children to choose marriage, kids are still being burdened implicitly with the marriage because marriage here stands as a burden, as an unnecessary responsibility to prove themselves instead of actual freedom. Secondly, right, the response to our
Right.
POI here is genuinely vague, saying parents could be set as the example. Doesn't this contribute to our point in how kids will be implicitly burdened to construct a family as their life goal? Because in order to carry on the bloodline to set a perfect example as their parents does. Second of all, teaching kids to prefer being single means teaching individuals the skills essential to living, such as independent skills or the skills indispensable to living. By contrast, centering marriage as a life's primary goal, superior goal, neglects these vital capacities. This harm falls disproportionately hard on young girls, right? Since girls have the high possibility of being taught to prioritize family over oneself. Years of feminism act has brought independence to women. We do not want this incessant cycle to start again. Women are trapped and taught at a young age that marriage is the end goal, and that being trapped in a family is a more superior goal as to living independently. Last of all, Judge, finding the one suitable for marriage does not come after purposely seeking. As we said in our model, if parents are kids are indoctrinated by the belief that marriage at the end of the day is the end goal and it's the only way out, they will automatically judge every new acquaintance or friend by whether they make a suitable spouse rather than evaluating them on the basis of like a genuine friendship or shared compatibility as a companion. As I always say, a suitable relationship comes naturally, not after intentional seeking. We don't see how setting marriage as the end goal of the day are going to help them find a more suitable spouse as opposed to the case where we first view the new acquaintance as a friend, not view them, not judge them as if they may a suitable spouse, right? So at the end of the day, Judge, if you really view true autonomy and the genuine marriage that comes after a natural interaction, not after intentional seeking. And if you really care about the birth rates of a country, please vote for the opposition side. Thank you.
The biggest stakeholders of today's debate are the parents. Every parent wants the best for their child, including their emotional well-being, happiness, and a close relationship with their child. So far in this debate, side opposition has been the side that most effectively articulated the reasons as to why parents should not prefer to raise their child to be single, and thus so proud to stand as side opposition. As I wrote on my speech, I'll bring up three key clash points of today's debate. First, the benefits of being single versus the benefits of having a romantic relationship. Second, which teaching techniques are better for the child. And third, which side better prepares the child for toxic relationships. Introducing the reasons as to why your ballot should go to side opposition. With that being said, our first clash point is the benefits of being single versus the benefits of having a romantic relationship. We as side opposition tell you through our first argument that having a romantic partner brings emotional and financial support which benefits for the child's future. Meanwhile, while side proposition argues that being single allows the child to feel less pressure from societal standards, such as having a boyfriend by college or getting married by 30. However, we first have a few issues with their first argument. First, we think that the growing trend in society is already moving away from these rigid social expectations. People are increasingly accepting different lifestyles, meaning children are less pressured by these societal standards than before. We see this trend of accepting singleness through the decreasing birth rates in South Korea and within the global community. Eventually, as a child grows up and joins the outside workforce, we think that instead of being pressured with different strict social standards, but they would rather be introduced to diverse perspectives that allow singleness. Because children will be exposed to different perspectives eventually, we think that the parents are not the right people to teach their child to be single since it can lead to side effects. For instance, if the parent continues to instill values and say that being single is better, it leads the child to overthink and start to believe that their parents regret their marriage, which is why they want their child to be single. Thus, parents are not the right people to constantly remind the child that being single is a better alternative. Alternative. In addition, parents are not the right people to teach their child about singleness because, as our second argument explains, it can lead to worsened parent and child relationships, which goes against the main stakeholders' interests. Even if the parent doesn't directly state that relationships are bad, saying that singleness is better can lead a child to view their parent as wanting them to stay single. This means the child may feel uneasy to tell their parents when they get a romantic partner, which leads to distance between the parent and the child. Second, even if pressure exists in society, the solution to teach children to avoid relationships entirely is not the right solution. Rather, we should teach them not to
we should teach them the need not to rush into relationships and that they should enter one when they feel ready. Therefore, side opposition provides the best of both worlds where the child can enjoy the benefits of a relationship without feeling forced by social expectations. Now let's move on to the second clash point. Our second clash point is which which teaching techniques are better for the child. Side proposition argues that teaching your child to be single is better because they can teach their child self-respect, while we argue that instead of teaching your child to be single, teaching them how to have a healthy relationship is much better. Side proposition's main point is that we need to teach our child to be single in order to teach them self-respect. However, we think that teaching your child to be single is not the sole way to teach your child self-respect. In fact, teaching children how to maintain healthy boundaries, communicate effectively with your partner, and respect themselves both with their partner teaches self-respect more effectively. But more importantly, our model teaches how to have a healthy relationship while teaching these values also, but also preparing the child for relationship rather than shielding them from reality. Therefore, our side provides all the benefits of self-respect by also equipping the children with practical skills such as maintaining boundaries, which side proposition completely neglects by solely instilling values of needing to be single. Our third and final crash point in today's debate is which side better prepares the child for toxic relationships. Side proposition through the third argument tells you that desperation lowers standards, which leads to toxic relationships, and that teaching children to be single solves these issues. However, we think that the better way to prepare children for toxic relationships is not to simply imply that relationships have downsides and that they should prefer to stay single instead. The better approach is to teach children what healthy relationships look like and when to leave unhealthy relationships. Ultimately, avoiding relationships does not teach children how to navigate them, and our side equips our children with skills necessary to identify toxic behaviors, establish boundaries, and pursue relationships that genuinely contribute to their well-being. So to conclude, when we compare both sides of the world, opposition provides children with emotional support, practical life skills, and the ability to build healthy relationships while still maintaining self-respect and independence instead of simply trying to shield their child from pursuing relationships by instilling the parents' own values of needing to be single on their child. And for all these reasons, so proud to oppose.
This debate, judges, ultimately comes down to one central question. What is the interest of the actors, or in this case, parents? The answer to this question clearly favors the opposition, because throughout today's debate, we have demonstrated that parents should not raise their child to prefer one certain lifestyle. Instead, they should equip their children with the knowledge, values, and emotional skills necessary in order for them to make informed decisions for themselves. And by doing so, parents can best maximize their child's happiness, protect their long-term well-being, and cultivate a lifelong relationship built on trust and also support. This also fulfills the interest of the parents, because what kind of parent does not want their child to be happy, safe, and trusting? Today, I will compare the debate through three major clashes. Number one, what approach best promotes a child's long-term happiness and well-being? The proposition continued to state that they the proposition continues to state that they also value singlehood and marriage. They both value both. However, what they stated later says otherwise. Later, they have compared parents promoting singlehood to be the same as them promoting healthy food instead of junk food. Opposition arguing that marriage is like junk food, that it's bad. The opposition has clearly stated that children need to make informed choices that will ultimately allow them to make their future a long-term happy one and one that is safe. Therefore, the opposition has won this first clash point. Second, what is the proper role of parents in preparing their child for adulthood? The proposition has stated that parents need to teach their children to respect themselves, and in order for them to respect themselves, they need to be single. However, like our previous speaker has stated, the opposition fulfills this better. Because in order to respect themselves, they do not always need to be single. Just because you are married or in a relationship does not mean you are less respectful to yourself than the people that are single. Because then our parents,
Sorry, I
they just
stopped
not respect
listening.
themselves because they're in a relationship. No, they can learn self-respect even better because they're able to look at different perspectives and learn different things as well. Last class point is which side better fulfill the incentives of responsibility. responsible. There are three incentives of responsible parents. Number one, allowing your child to be happy. Number two, allowing your child to live a happy and safe life. And lastly, allowing them to build a relationship built on trust. Our site has clearly stated that with the parents showing them different styles and parents being their emotional support to their children can learn the different perspectives. They can also feel comfortable communicating with their parents. They will not have to hide their relationships, and they will not have to hide their feelings for their parents. This will be able to allow them to have a better relationship, a better trustworthy relationship, allowing them to have a long-term relationship with their parents as well. And also, because learning different emotional skills, they will also be able to have better self-respect, to be more happy. They will also be able to lastly have a better well-being because they will know these different types of styles, and they will be able to make their choices for themselves, not because their parents force them to have a certain type of style. Therefore, with all these reasons, we strongly negate this resolution. Thank you.
Important clarification, we are not raising children to avoid relationships at all, right? Not avoiding relationships as a whole, as how relationships are bad, right? We are teaching them, we are raising them to build lives so fulfilling that a relationship must compete with their existing happiness rather than rescue them from its absence. That is an important distinction here, and we cannot continue this debate without understanding this, right? In my speech, I'm going to weigh based on the stakeholders' probability, time frame, magnitude, and severity, and prove why we win each class, right? So firstly, under stakeholder, who is actually bearing the consequences? They tell you that it's the parents who are bearing the consequences of their child's marriage. I don't think that parents are the biggest people who are impacted. I think who are the most impacted is children. And from what we heard, the opposition side is only caring for the parents instead of caring for the children. I think we already win that class, right? The child lives with this upbringing for decades, right? The child lives with their partner for decades, but the parents experience only the indirect effects, right? Fear for the child's welfare should be prioritized over the parental preferences, right? And they tell you that parents always knows best for their child, right? Opposition assumes that parents knows what's best for his child, but parents usually project their own desires and their own expectations onto their child. That is not always kind, right? That's sometimes toxic. The child is ultimately best placed to determine what makes them fulfilled and what makes them happiest, right? Our side gives them the freedom and confidence to make that decisions themselves. Okay, now let's move on to probability weighting. Our impacts are inevitable, right? Almost everybody experiences social pressure today, right? Almost everybody faces fear of loneliness or romantic rejection, and our model directly addresses these harms, right? But their impacts are really speculative because a preference for a relationship does not mean entering a relationship. Entering a relationship does not mean marriage. Marriage does not mean having children. The birth rate impact relies on too many uncertain links, right? Firstly, on time frame, our benefit happens immediately. Children gain independence and resilience from adolescence onwards, right? These benefits will persist throughout adulthood and throughout their entire life, but their benefits happen much, much later, right? The birth rates only materialize and only cause change decades later, right? And even if we're talking about birth rates, well, that needs a major societal shift for everyone in the world, right? Parental support in old age is even further away. So the judges should, you should prioritize the impacts that are both earlier and more certain. I think we already win on that, right? Fourthly, under magnitude, we are shaping an entire world, right? We are shaping how children are evaluating relationships, and the children create this future society. We are changing how the future society evaluates the relationships that are going to get stuck in for the rest of their life, right? How they reach self-worth, how they have their self-esteem, and how they pursue happiness, and what are their life goals, right? They affect the single outcome, which is whether children are more likely to enter relationships and have children, right? I think this is much more narrow than the life-wide effects that we actually provide for these children, who are, by the way, the children are the most important stakeholders. The children are the most important stakeholders, and it's not the parents, right? Finally, under severity, the harms that we prevent is dependency on romantic validation and stay in toxic relationships and feeling like singleness is a failure, right? The harms that they prevent is lower birth rates and less support for parents in the old age, which, to be honest, doesn't even matter as much as the children having to live with somebody that they don't even like for the rest of their life, right? So, I think at the end of the day, it's really clear which side wins this debate, right? On opposition, they gave you this case built around stakeholders that honestly don't really matter as much as a child. They built their case around parents who honestly they just don't have as much of an impact as our case, which actually has an impact to the child. They also gave you a case that's highly improbable, that happens in a really long time and might not even happen, that has a really small magnitude because they're affecting a single outcome of a single child, and how like in a really narrow case where children are more likely to enter relationships and have children, and they link that to this impact, which is highly improbable again. And finally, they have this really severe that lacks severity at all because they claim to prevent lower birth rates, which might not even happen, and less support for parents in the old age that is much less severe than what we prevent, which is dependency and stay in toxic relationships. So for all these reasons, please give the ballot to the proposition.